The night it all started, I remember feeling unusually drained, as though the campus had stolen every last ounce of energy from my bones. The winter air pressed through the cracked hostel windows, carrying a chill that made the room feel older than it was. My name is Eliot Ward, and at that time, my world revolved around essays, cafeteria coffee, and the two friends who unknowingly held more influence over me than anyone else ever had, Caleb Rowan and Mason Hale. Our hostel room wasn't extraordinary, yet it had the strange ability of holding every emotion we brought into it: laughter, silence, tension, and the kinds of secrets young adults pretend they aren't carrying. Caleb's bed sat by the door, perpetually unmade, blankets tossed as if he wrestled with sleep. Mason's space was neatly organized, almost disciplined. My corner was a quiet refuge, a place where I could disappear into headphones or a paperback and observe life rather than participate in it. Caleb was the spark among us, restless, unpredictable, always talking as though the next confession might slip unintentionally from his mouth. His charm worked like gravity in crowded rooms, people drifted toward him without knowing why. Mason, on the other hand, was steady. His voice carried the calm of someone who rarely said more than he needed to, but every word felt chosen with intention. They balanced each other. And somehow, I balanced with them, but beneath that balance lay a pulse I tried not to acknowledge. The first time I realized my chest tightened differently around Caleb, I told myself it was admiration, not attraction. When I caught Mason studying me in a way that lingered too long, I chalked it up to curiosity, not something deeper. I wasn't ready to give language to the ache forming quietly inside me. The truth is, I was still learning myself. I had accepted parts of my identity, but I hadn't shared them. Not with my friends, not with my family, not even with my own reflection for more than a few seconds at a time. I feared how everything would shift once my feelings had names. That evening, Caleb and Mason were unusually quiet. They sat at opposite ends of the room, each pretending to be occupied, Caleb on his phone, Mason scribbling something in a notebook, but the silence between them felt deliberate, as though they were both waiting for something to unfold. Twice, I caught them exchanging glances, the kind that say more than words would. "You guys good?" I asked, halfway through removing my jacket. Caleb glanced up too fast. "Yeah, just thinking." Mason nodded without looking up. "Long day." I accepted their answers because I wanted to, not because I believed them. Still, exhaustion had already claimed me. My eyelids felt heavy, and the warmth of my blanket was calling with gentle insistence. The cold outside had settled into my muscles, and the idea of sleep seemed like the only thing worth pursuing. "I'm turning in early," I murmured. Caleb's phone dimmed instantly. "Already? It's not even midnight." "I'm done for today," I said with a small laugh. "Textbooks officially won." Mason closed his notebook with quiet finality. "Get some rest." Their voices were normal, maybe too normal. Something was off. Something unspoken was circling the room like a draft I couldn't pinpoint. But I didn't have the energy to investigate it. I slid under my blanket, feeling the warmth slowly uncoil through my limbs, and let the ambient sounds of the hostel lull me closer to sleep. From the hallway came the familiar blend of distant chatter, footsteps, and the occasional clang of a metal door. Someone was playing music 2 rooms away, muffled enough to blend into white noise. The soft hum of the ceiling fan above me became a slow heartbeat, a steady rhythm pulling me deeper. As I lay there, half-conscious, thoughts drifted in scattered fragments. I remembered the way Caleb laughed earlier that week, too loudly, almost forcing joy into the air. I remembered the moment Mason held my gaze during dinner, his expression unreadable. I remembered the strange energy between them today, a tension I couldn't identify. I wondered if it had anything to do with me. I quickly dismissed the idea. The world, after all, didn't revolve around my internal storms. My breathing slowed. The mattress sank slightly under my weight, embracing me. My final moments awake were calm, deceptively calm. I heard Caleb whisper something to Mason, too quietly to decipher, and Mason respond with a murmur that carried a sense of urgency. But sleep pulled me under before I could piece their words together. When I woke briefly an hour later, I saw Caleb and Mason still awake. The overhead light was off, replaced by the soft glow of Caleb's desk lamp. They were sitting close together, speaking in low voices, their silhouettes outlined by the warm amber light. For a moment, I watched them without moving. Their expressions were serious, almost anxious. Caleb was running his hands through his hair repeatedly, a habit he only had when stressed. Mason leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the floor as if deciphering something he didn't want to say aloud that I should have asked. I should have broken the silence hanging like an unsaid confession between all of us. But my mind, hazy with sleep, convinced me it wasn't my place. I turned over, closed my eyes again, and let the half-light fade. The room fell still. The last thing I heard was Caleb exhaling as though he had made a decision but didn't know how to carry it out. When morning came, that decision, whatever it was, would begin unraveling everything we thought we understood about each other. But in that final moment before sleep claimed me completely, I had no idea how much the night ahead would change the three of us. I only knew that something was waiting in the silence, something shaped by secrets, longing, and the fragile bond we shared, and although I slept peacefully, Caleb and Mason did not. A soft rustling sound tugged me out of sleep, quiet enough to be accidental, purposeful enough to feel wrong. For a moment, I stayed still, caught between the dim haze of dreaming and the sharpened awareness of waking. The room was wrapped in a subdued half-darkness, lit only by the faint amber glow of Caleb's desk lamp, still burning from earlier. At first, I thought I was alone. But then I sensed movement, a shift of weight, the whisper of fabric, the slow exhale of someone trying not to be heard. My pulse quickened instinctively, though I didn't know why. I blinked several times until shapes began to form. Caleb Rowan and Mason Hale were sitting near my bed. Caleb was on the floor, knees drawn up, fingers interlaced tightly as if he were holding something fragile inside himself. Mason sat on my desk chair turned toward me, elbows on his thighs, posture tense. Their faces carried an expression I had never seen on either of them, an uneasy mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Eliot? Mason's voice was soft, the kind of tone someone uses when they're afraid of startling you. I pushed myself upright slowly, my heartbeat stumbling into a faster rhythm. What are you guys doing? Is everything okay? Caleb looked at Mason for a brief moment, like he needed confirmation, or courage, or maybe both. Then he turned to me. His voice cracked slightly as he spoke. We needed to talk to you. And we didn't want to wait until morning. The room felt colder, as though the night air had seeped in through an unseen crack. I wrapped my blanket a little tighter around my shoulders, not because of the temperature but because of the tension radiating from the two of them. What's going on? I asked. Caleb drew a long breath, his chest rising and falling as though preparing for a confession he'd avoided for too long. I've been lying, he said quietly. To someone else, and to myself. Mason's eyes closed briefly, as if bracing for the impact of the words that would follow. My stomach tightened. I had never seen Caleb look so fragile. He continued, voice unsteady. I'm supposed to be with someone. You know that. But lately. I can't explain it. I feel like I'm splitting in two. The person I'm with doesn't know me, not the way you do. His gaze flicked to me, holding longer than I expected. Not the way both of you do. A tremor ran through me. The room, the silence, the vulnerability, it all weighed heavily, the air almost thick enough to touch. Mason leaned forward. Caleb's been struggling for weeks. He didn't know how to say it. And his voice faltered for a moment. I didn't know how to help without dragging you into it, but it felt wrong to keep pretending everything was normal. I swallowed, throat suddenly dry. Dragging me into what, exactly? Caleb's hands trembled where they rested on his knees. I care about you, Eliot, he said. More than I should. More than I've admitted. His voice grew raw, honest in a way that made my breath catch. And that's not fair to the person I'm with. It's not fair to you. But I couldn't keep pretending nothing was happening. My pulse echoed loudly in my ears. Part of me had feared something like this for months, another part had wished for it quietly, dangerously. Hearing it aloud felt unreal, like a truth I wasn't ready to touch. Mason looked at me with a steadiness that contrasted Caleb's shaking composure. He's been torn apart by this. I told him it wasn't something he could fix by ignoring. And I told him he needed to be honest, with you, with her, with himself. I stared at both of them, mind struggling to make sense of the situation. The emotional weight pressed heavily on my chest. There was no anger inside me, only confusion, fear, and an ache I had tried to bury for months. Why tell me now? I asked softly. Caleb swallowed hard. Because tonight I realized I couldn't keep moving forward without facing it. And because it's not just me. His eyes flicked to Mason again. Mason shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. This isn't only about Caleb, he admitted. It's about all of us. The dynamic changed a long time ago. We just didn't talk about it. A deep shiver ran down my spine. I felt exposed, as though someone had peeled back layers I'd carefully constructed to protect myself. Caleb's voice broke through the silence again, hoarse and low. I know I've been emotionally unfaithful. I know I've crossed lines, even if nothing physical happened. And I hate myself for hurting someone who trusts me. His eyes glistened, not with tears, but with guilt so sharp it felt visible. But the part of me that cares for you won't go away. It only gets louder. I drew in a slow breath, trying to calm the trembling in my own hands. Caleb, you should have told me sooner, I said. My voice felt smaller than I intended. I don't know what you expect from me. I don't expect anything, he whispered. I just needed you to know the truth. Even if it changes everything. A long, thick silence settled between us. No one dared to move. The distant hum of the hostel's generator filled the emptiness, punctuating the tension rather than breaking it. That I finally spoke. And you, Mason? Why are you here? My question seemed to strike deeper than either of them anticipated. Mason's shoulders straightened slowly, and when he met my gaze, his expression carried something vulnerable, something he had tried very hard to hide. Because I care about what happens next, he said quietly. To all of us. Caleb rubbed his forehead, exhaling shakily. I don't want to lose either of you. And I don't want to keep pretending everything is fine when it isn't. My heartbeat thudded painfully in my chest. This moment, this fragile, suspended moment, felt like a turning point none of us had prepared for. The lamp flickered once, casting unsteady shadows around the room. My blanket, still wrapped around my shoulders, felt like the only anchor I had left. I looked from Caleb to Mason, both of them waiting, hoping, for something I wasn't sure I could give. Finally, I asked the question forming in my mind since the moment I woke. What exactly do you want from me tonight? The words fell into the air like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through the tightness binding us. Caleb inhaled sharply, eyes widening. Mason stiffened, as though bracing for what Caleb would say next, but Caleb didn't answer, not immediately. He closed his eyes, breathed out slowly, and said only 5 words, soft and trembling. We need to be honest. And the night, already fragile, cracked open a little more. Caleb didn't speak right away. His silence hovered heavily, as if he were choosing each word with painful precision. Mason sat still beside him, shoulders stiff, his gaze fixed on the floor. Their tension pulled me fully awake, erasing the last traces of sleep from my mind. When Caleb finally lifted his head, his expression looked stripped of all his usual charm, raw, unguarded, almost fragile. Honesty, he murmured, is the only thing I have left that isn't a lie. The confession hung between us, trembling and heavy. I waited, unsure whether to push him or let him unravel at his own pace. Mason glanced at him with a tense mixture of encouragement and dread. Caleb drew in a shaky breath. I've been pretending for months. Pretending I'm okay, pretending my relationship is fine, pretending the feelings I have for you don't mean anything. His eyes met mine with a depth that pinned me in place. But they do. They matter more than I can hide from anymore. My chest tightened, a slow, cautious ache. Hearing the words was different from suspecting them. Hearing them made everything real in a way that felt both terrifying and strangely relieving. That I tried to speak, but Mason leaned forward first. His voice was steady yet soft, like he was navigating a fragile bridge. Eliot, this isn't just Caleb spiraling. He's been going back and forth about this for weeks. I kept telling him the only way forward was to be honest, with himself, with her, with you. I looked at Mason carefully. And what about you? You keep saying, we, and, all of us like you're part of this. He didn't flinch, but the tension in his jaw revealed more than words could. Because I am, he admitted. This situation affects me too. The three of us, we've built our whole year around each other. And somewhere along the way, the lines blurred. Caleb rubbed his palms against his jeans, restless. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Least of all you. His voice dropped to a trembling whisper. But pretending I feel nothing has been its own kind of betrayal. My breath caught. The word, betrayal, reverberated through the air like a quiet warning bell that I shifted slightly, grounding myself. Caleb, you're still with someone. No matter how you feel, she deserves the truth before anything else happens. His shoulders sagged, as if he had expected that response and feared it. I know, he said. I know I've already crossed a line emotionally. I know what that means. I'm not asking for anything tonight. I'm not asking you to give me an answer. He swallowed. I just needed you to see me for who I am and what I'm fighting. Mason nodded in agreement. He needed to say it out loud. And you deserved to hear it from him, not from guesses. I stared at both of them, trying to untangle my own emotions. I cared about Caleb, deeply, quietly, overwhelmingly. But I also cared about not being the reason a relationship fell apart. And beneath it all, I cared about the fragile harmony the three of us shared, a harmony now trembling under the weight of unspoken truths. I don't want to be part of a secret, I said slowly. I don't want to be the reason something ends badly. You aren't, Caleb said instantly. The cracks were already there. My feelings for you just made them impossible to ignore. Mason exhaled, rubbing the bridge of his nose. You can't carry the blame for his dishonesty. He knows that. Caleb's eyes flickered with remorse. I'll tell her. Tomorrow. No lies, no half-truths. She deserves better than what I've given. A silence settled between us, but this time it wasn't suffocating. It was reflective, a moment of collecting breath before the next step that I studied the two of them closely. Caleb looked like someone stepping into a storm of his own making. Mason, though composed, carried a flicker of vulnerability, a quiet concern that reached deeper than his calm demeanor allowed. What about us? I asked finally. Where does this leave the three of us? Caleb didn't answer immediately. Instead, Mason spoke, voice low but sincere. I think it leaves us with a choice. We can pretend nothing happened and let everything rot quietly, or we can be honest. All of us. Caleb's gaze snapped to Mason, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. My pulse quickened. What do you mean, all of us? Mason held my gaze steadily. It's not just Caleb who cares about you, he said. I do too. Maybe not in the same way, maybe not as intensely, but there are feelings here, feelings none of us addressed because we didn't want to ruin what we had. The confession hit harder than I expected. I felt the room shift, as though the walls had moved closer. Caleb looked at Mason with a hint of surprise, but not confusion. More like recognition, something he had known but hadn't spoken aloud. Mason added quietly, I wasn't trying to compete with him. I wasn't trying to insert myself. I just couldn't sit here tonight and let only his truth rewrite everything. I breathed in sharply, overwhelmed. 3 people. 3 sets of feelings. One fragile friendship at the center. None of this is simple, I said, my voice unsteady. Caleb's lips curved into a painful, almost apologetic smile. Nothing real ever is. The lamp flickered again, casting moving shadows across their faces. The night felt warmer now, the tension less sharp but still heavy with consequence. That I spoke slowly, choosing my words carefully. Here's what I want. Honesty, From all of us. Respect for everyone involved. And no decisions made out of panic or guilt. Caleb nodded, eyes earnest. I can do that. Mason nodded as well. All of us can. I continued, Caleb, you need to talk to her first. Clearly. Kindly. Without blaming anyone else. I will, he promised, and after that, I said, we'll figure out the rest. Together. For the first time that night, the air seemed to loosen, as though the truth had been a locked door finally opened. The weight pressing against my chest eased slightly. Caleb leaned back against the wall, exhausted but relieved. Mason folded his hands, posture softening. I pulled the blanket around me again, grounding myself in its warmth. None of us moved for several seconds. We just sat there, 3 friends, 3 truths, 1 uncertain future. Finally, Caleb's voice broke the silence, soft and sincere. Thank you for listening. I didn't deserve it, but I needed it. I shook my head. You needed to be honest. That's all any of us can do. Mason glanced at both of us, his expression thoughtful. Tomorrow isn't going to be easy, he said. But at least it will be real. I nodded. Real is enough. The room settled into a calmer stillness. The lamp hummed quietly. Outside, footsteps echoed down the hallway, as if reminding us that the world continued even as ours shifted shape. That I lay back slowly, not to escape the conversation but to let it sink in. Caleb and Mason remained beside me, not touching, not speaking, just sharing the same fragile moment. That as I closed my eyes, one truth settled inside me with surprising clarity: tonight didn't end anything, it began something none of us had expected, and whatever came next, we would face it with open eyes.